This podcast is brought to you by ResX. Are you tired of paying huge rates to the big cloud providers? Are you worried about being booted off a cloud platform if your company doesn't meet their ever-shifting standards? Ready to step up your data security and disaster recovery game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your new cloud is ready. Introducing xCloud, the scalable, resilient computing cloud that is also actually affordable. It's high-performance compute for half the cost. HPC for HTC. xCloud from Red Team is opening a beta program for new cloud computing customers, and that means you, my friend. The xCloud is powered by the XMDC immersion-cooled modular data center from ResX. I've seen this data center in operation, and it is a total game changer. So if you want more information about the beta launch, go to the URL in the description. Type in promo code BETA, B-E-T-A, for 50% off of your first instance. And so the URL is going to be digitalwildcatters.com/EnergyX.
Let's get started. This is actually my first episode I've recorded in a while. Jake's been putting the team on his back, so we got a good one here today, though.
First time we've done one together in a minute.
For a long time. But
this should feel special, at least.
Me and Jake haven't been
6 months.
recording together because we're just busy right now. Right. So we've been swapping out, but this one's important because we got Ryan Rice on the show today. Ryan Rice, I can't mention any of the rude comments from the roast, but I mean, you're getting roasted for being the younger brother, the younger sibling of the Rice brothers. But, you've been a longtime supporter of ours, one of our early investors in Digital Wildcatters, longtime friend, done some pretty incredible things in the oil and gas industry. Today, you're working on Resnet, so we're going to talk about Resnet. I'm glad that you're coming out of the closet and talking about Resnet.
It took forever.
We're gonna do the joke still with the roast coming out of the closet.
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
This is just continuation of the roast.
I love that Ryan at the end of that. He's like, I gotta go, get a massive amount of therapy from all the trauma that was caused here tonight. I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to bring up,
we're good.
but
we're good.
No. So, dude, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start with Resnet real quick. Just that kind of high 40,000 foot view of what Resnet is, and then we'll dive into kind of the journey to get there.
Yeah, so a 40,000 foot view of Resnet. We're a software and services startup. On the software side of the business, we're intimately focused on production operations, getting the right person to the right job at the right time safely. We refer to that as our well tender, field service management, and field dispatching solution. And our mission is to unite the field and office, right? So really focused on culturally that blue collar, white collar problem, doing a few different things out of the box with respect to gamifying operations, some things that we had seen early on at Rice Energy, something that I'm very passionate about as far as production operations go. And then on the services side of the business, very, very bespoke, nerdy, technical stuff centered around reservoir engineering. So we do what we call intelligent flow control, which are flowing well interference tests. So we play musical instruments with the wells to be able to understand well communication, how much are these wells talking in the subsurface that influences our well spacing, our asset development program. And so we'll help operators conduct these advanced well testing campaigns.
Yeah. So is that more kind of like a consulting based, service based model with that part of the company? Okay.
And like any bootstrap startup, something that we're very skilled at, something that we're really good at, so we can help kind of subsidize our burn with respect to
cash flow is cash flow. Actually, let's talk about it right now because, there's been a pretty big shakeup in tech in VC. And I can tell you from raising capital for Digital Wildcatters, part of our revenue, it's not subscription-based revenue, and people look down on that. Like, oh, well, service-based. For me, I'm like, cash flow is cash flow. However you can make cash. And now the VCs had this, and tech has had this correction in the market. Now people are like, oh, hey, any money is good. And so, I think that this is a great way to build a business. It's like, hey, if we can offset some of our burn by doing the things that we're good at, while simultaneously building the product, building relationships, things of this nature. I mean, that's the way to go. And I mean, you've self-funded this company all yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you're pretty sensitive to, what the burn rate is.
The consulting side too, like, and the other thing that people forget about is that a big reason that this was part of kind of the model in software is that gives you that tight feedback loop with your customer so that you can continue to develop more apps or build out your existing application.
Yeah,
not just the cash flow.
At the end of the day, I have my opinions with respect to what the industry might need or is lacking. But at the end of the day, we have to work with these engineers. We have to work with these companies to truly understand, where are the pain points and where could we be doing better. So rather than just being in my basement coding, with our developers, what I think the solution should be, just getting ourselves out there, working, doing some consulting work, and really building relationships, understanding where some of these problems truly lie.
Yeah. Let's dive or roll back a little bit and talk about your journey. Going through Rice Energy. You went to school for petroleum engineering, right?
Yep, petroleum engineering.
Legend has it your dad just said you're going to be a petroleum engineer. You're going to be a geologist.
Is this how it really was it like masterfully planned like this?
No.
Okay.
I mean, kind of like I think
because it's a great story, but I was like, how much truth is there?
I think we pretend that's the truth, but in all honesty, it's kind of like the roast. It was just brothers getting one another's backs in terms of figuring out our swim lane, our technical discipline, where we can kind of add value to the family.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a certain element of, well, you're going to go do this, and it does kind of clear up some of that anxiety I know kids in college have, like, what am I going to do? And having your parents so confidently say, like, this is where you want to be. It kind of helps remove some of that anxiety. But we were born and raised outside of Boston, Massachusetts, so knew nothing about oil and gas industry. We grew up in a place where it was demonized.
Yeah.
But
which I think is so interesting, because I actually didn't know that until recently. I think it might have been the roast that I figured that out, and it's really interesting to me, just given Toby's position and commentary around natural gas and LNG and the terrible energy policy surrounding New England, and I'm like, oh, you guys are actually from there too, and so that added a different element.
So we put in that zinger to Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw that.
Which I love.
Asterisk notes, and by the way, our mom lives in New England, paying absurd prices for propane every year, which is a 30% higher emissions. But
yeah. So, and your dad was finance, right? Was he private equity? Is that?
He was working for BlackRock. He'd worked for State Street Research prior to that, much more like on the hedge fund side.
Yeah.
Went over, kind of managed BlackRock's mutual fund in oil and gas, but one day he got the itch to start his own oil and gas company. Sent Toby down to Texas, started roughnecking. Eventually the opportunity came. He moved up to Pittsburgh. I actually moved in with Toby at that time, so I just got out of high school and I was running up in Maine. And then I got injured and I was no longer going to be able to run. And that was kind of my life to that point. We're very obsessed.
Like collegiate running?
I didn't.
Yep.
Like cross country kind of stuff?
Yeah. Cross country, long distance, track. Got injured.
Makes sense. You got the body type for it. I see it now.
Yeah. So got injured, couldn't do it. And then really for me, it was like a, quarter life crisis. Like, oh, I lost my passion. I don't know what I want to do. Toby just moved to Pittsburgh. And I was like, well, this is better than hanging out at my mom's house working at the grocery store. So moved to Pittsburgh, worked out in the field, lived with Toby when I wasn't out on location, did roustabout, worked on the rig floor for a while.
And this is at Rice.
Yeah, this was right when Toby was like getting things off the ground. So
between
leasing, helping him learn what that was, it made no sense to me as a 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But then eventually just working out in the field, getting, my hands dirty and seeing this whole other aspect to life that I had no experience growing up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Right? We just thought that the lights turned on however they did.
That's actually that's what I talk about all the time. People in oil and gas have this angst towards people that have low energy IQ, but I'm like, think about a kid that grows up in the Northeast, like in New York. They don't have any exposure to energy or oil and gas. They think electricity comes out of the wall. It's like, you can't blame them for not knowing.
We just didn't know. We weren't educated.
Yeah.
But long story short, after 2 years of living in a trailer with my brother Derek at that time, drilling our X-Man wells, our Hulk wells at that time, I realized really quick I'm never going to have a girlfriend living in a trailer in Greene County, Pennsylvania, middle of nowhere. And so finally I was like, well, I want to be a petroleum engineer, right? I want to go to the next level. My brothers made it pretty easy for me. Like, you could either go to UT or A&M. I went to A&M on game day. Saw 80,000 girls walking around in Daisy Dukes. Never seen Daisy Dukes before. So I
pretty
made
easy
decision for me.
Yeah.
Loved my time at A&M. Worked for Chevron while I was at A&M.
Did you go back to Rice after that? Or?
Yeah, I got kidnapped.
Kidnapped.
Family jokes, but not really. I took a full-time job with Chevron because I learned what the other side of life could look like, not working for my brothers.
Yeah.
A little bit better work-life balance to some degree. And then I'll never forget, Toby calls me up. He's like, when are you coming back up here? I was like, dude, I took a job with Chevron. Like, I haven't heard from you guys. You guys have been super busy and I got a pretty sweet gig there. And he was just like, he just hangs up the phone. I was like, that was weird. I didn't really think about it. But like 6 hours later, my brothers show up in Houston. And I'm like, what is happening? We're going out to dinner. We're going to talk. And so we go out. My girlfriend at that time, they break up with my girlfriend at the time for me. Brian
break up for me.
No, that's not an exaggeration. Like, long distance doesn't really work. Brian really needs to come back with us. So I had to cancel my offer with Chevron. 2 days later, moved up to Pittsburgh, and it was like just drinking from a frack pump at that point.
Yeah.
So
That's so funny, man. I didn't know that. I didn't know that story. And, for added context for anyone that's listening that's not aware, Rice Energy goes on, sells to EQT a little under, was it 8 billion?
Yeah, I think, Rice Energy was around 8, and then Rice Midstream Partners.
Okay.
2 or 3.
Yeah. So, awesome exit. Once they sold, is that when you, did you leave at that point? When did you, I don't know when you started Resnet.
Yeah. So then, 3 older brothers and myself, we came together. We founded Rice Investment Group, took some of our earnings from Rice Energy days and redeployed that capital back into the energy space.
Mm-hmm.
Companies like Combo Curve.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about the
and
portfolio.
Colbor.
Yeah, Colbor, Combo Curve, Umbrage.
A few upstream.
Archaea.
Yep, RKO. That was a fund maker in of itself. A few upstream deals.
You guys might have the most successful, well, at least oil and gas tech fund. You look at Umbrage just got acquired by Bain. Combo Curve had a massive round last year. So
it's been great to see what those guys can do.
Picked a lot of winners in the space.
And it just came back to like our time at Rice. We just put our operator's hat on and said like, where is the industry heading and what do we need? Mm-hmm. So Combo Curve was like a no-brainer. Having to be the guy working in Aries and ValNav and smashing my keyboard against the computer because I can't do anything.
That was a no-brainer.
That was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
We met Armand in this room for the first time, like when it was just him and Jeremy in a closet years ago.
It was actually this room. This was our first podcast studio back in 2018.
Really?
We're back. It's weird fucking situation.
But
this was our whole office, actually.
Anyways, Armand walks in here. And he's like, yeah, I've been following you guys. He's like, we're building something really cool. We're like, what are you building? He's like, I can't tell you. Like that verbatim. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you want to talk about? He's like, I just wanted to meet you guys. And awesome. Armand and Jeremy have become great friends ever since. Armand just texted us this morning to congratulate us on the raise, and so it's been cool to see their journey. But
amazing guys, amazing product,
Yeah, they've absolutely crushed it. So y'all had Rig.
Yep.
You're on like Fund 2 now, huh?
Yeah, we just started Fund 2 recently this year. We did Fund 1, and then 2020 came around, peak kind of pandemic, fully committed, fully deployed as far as our capital was concerned. And I really just had an itch to, pursue my passion with respect to building software, building technology, just like what I was doing at Rice, working with operators, getting back to it. So decided, to take the plunge, and Resnet was born in 2020, 2 months after negative oil. At that time thinking like, hey, maybe D&C might be slowing down a bit. We need to really focus on production, LOE. And so that was the idea then. And, as you guys can relate, every day you're learning something new, and the product, the vision is always evolving. And so it's been fun to just see, the baby evolve. That's
what products and companies are living, breathing things, right? And that's actually, I think that's what's so interesting. It's like, especially, just given the conversation of the winners that you picked, it's like, it's as much about picking the right founders and entrepreneurs, because 100%. Things are going to change so much along the way, and you need to be able to pick up on those cues and pivot and iterate over time. And I didn't know that you started right after, negative oil. That was when we went full time. 2 weeks before.
Lean in when everyone's running for the hills.
It's funny because when we decided to go full time, we talked to a couple of investors, talked to some advertisers. Advertisers like, yeah, we'll advertise with you. Investors like, yeah, we'll invest. And then go full time, and then 2 weeks later, negative oil, and
Perfect timing.
yeah, and it's like, oh, there is no money. You just like dig down, and I'm thankful for it now because it actually
100%.
allowed us to knuckle down and focus on, hey, what is our thesis and what are we building? And so, sure, you went through kind of similar thing then.
Yeah.
And so, I remember the first time you told me about well tender. It was probably 2 years ago. First time we talked about it. And so let's talk about, the well tender product a little bit, because if I'm not mistaken, it was named like kind of after Tinder, right? Like matchmaking.
Tinder for the oil field. Tender.
Swipe right.
Swipe
one
right.
thing,
Swipe
one
left.
thing I want to touch on this is like your attention to detail and branding and design. I mean, it doesn't go unnoticed by me, because we're really big about branding and design as well. And I always appreciate like those little things. And I know that you guys have a heavy gamification effort too throughout the platform, which we can talk about a little bit. But just wanted to tell you that like I always appreciate your branding around things and how you bring a creative element to the industry. So yeah, tell us what the original vision or thesis was for Well Tender and where it is today and what that product is.
Yeah. So when we incorporated Resnet, ultimately the vision was, something around production as a service. So there's a lot of automation. You guys just had Kelvin here last week with Peter, also one of our portfolio companies.
It's a great conversation.
Yeah. I listened to it. It was great. I loved it. And
we barely talked about Kelvin. We got to the end and it was like, oh yeah, let's talk about Kelvin a little bit. We just talked about like
that's always the best
Silicon
episodes.
Valley and all sorts of
maybe
stuff.
we can go a little personal. But yeah, we just met Kelvin. It was really opening my eyes to all the automation opportunities with artificial lift and midstream. And I knew as a reservoir engineer that, we have different SCADA systems, different connectors, and it would actually, to some degree, be a little bit difficult to scale out. So I started focusing on some of these more bespoke automation problems. And at that time, Resnet was, a platform on, through Kelvin, through which we could deploy some of these very bespoke automation algorithms. And then, very quickly learned that the architecture might not be quite there yet for the industry. There's a few early movers and adopters that might be a lot more mature on that standpoint, but that certainly wasn't the case for the entire industry at that point. And I started to realize that what I was seeing as being a lot of the problems were similar problems that we had at Rice Energy, coming down to simple communication, simple work order management, project management. Just data, access to that data. And so it's funny, but you guys, and what was it, 2018, 2019, WellHub with the CRM?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
At essence, we're similar, following in your footsteps there, because at its heart, what I started to learn was, man, we really, what the industry needs is truly a customer relationship management platform.
That's funny because Jake was on to the right idea.
Yeah.
I'd invested in WellHub and the idea was sound. It was just kind of early at that point. And but it just made so much sense. It's like, you need this the CRM for
The first time I met Toby was at the Rice Alliance Venture Day, Energy whatever day, and I pitched him and Kyle Durham WellHub, and that was the first time. And he brought up the Evolve or Die video from Denver. He had saw that like on LinkedIn or Twitter or something.
One of the coolest things, not to get off topic here, but the first time I met Toby, we went up to Pittsburgh to shoot that electric frac video. So that was like in 2020, I think it was. And we're in there and Toby's like, dude, he's like, that Evolve or Die video, he's like, that inspired the hell out of me. And I thought that was cool as fuck to hear that, some little piece of shit video I made on my cell phone while walking in downtown Denver had that impact. But, I think you guys, when Ryan walked into the office before this podcast, he's like, man, it's got Shillennial vibes. Like, you guys have always had that same mindset, of bringing a new perspective and new technology and creative energy to oil and gas that, really kind of the same thing that we do over here at Digital Wildcatters and resonates with us. And so, I think that was always what was cool, is like kind of having that bond of just being people that were pushing the industry forward. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think we in the industry have almost become desensitized to, we'll say, poorer quality solutions out there. I see so many engineers, where it's normal to wait 20, 30 minutes, for an application to open. and then, another 30 minutes to find, some other file that they're looking for because it's nested somewhere deep in the archives of that file directory. And we lived that life at Rice Energy, and it wasn't until we had adopted Salesforce and everything was immediately at our fingertips and searchable, modern cloud-based software. And we realized at that point, like, wow, we didn't know it, but we might as well have been like on the treadmill at like a 5% incline our whole life. And it wasn't until we got off that incline where we realized, like, wow, we've been doing this on hard mode up until this point. And so now this is what easy mode somewhat feels like.
Yeah. So you guys took Salesforce platform, which is traditionally, kind of a CRM platform. And it's funny because Salesforce was in our office back in 2020. And like, yeah, we're looking for like use cases in oil and gas. And we told them about Rice Energy and they had no clue about this. I'm like, yeah, dude, they built this massive multi-billion-dollar company off, and Salesforce is kind of like their operating system. And so let's dive into that a little bit because I've never actually talked to y'all about that and heard of like.
I feel like that's important context too for your thinking of Resnet. Too.
Yeah. I mean, outside looking in, it seems like that was kind of the catalyst and precursor of like, hey, we did these things with Salesforce. I think I can build a better built for purpose, tailored solution.
Yeah. Honestly, Toby was driving that ball forward every single day.
Which Toby's a huge, anytime you go to Toby's, he's like, brings you to the computer, watch this. Oh, yeah.
Look at this new dashboard I made.
It's got everything. I mean, it's so impressive. But it started off with applying the CRM in a traditional sense with respect to land, right? I mean, that is sales, right? And so, while we were running our land game and Toby needs better visibility into, okay, where's this land runner at? Where's this agreement at? Adopted Salesforce really early on. And that was really the aha moment, for Toby at that time with land. And then from that point forward, it was, we need to get the entire business onto this, just seeing how much more efficient the land department was running. And so we kind of worked our way backwards, from land all the way towards the wellhead in terms of getting the custom objects, the relationships, the flows, all of the data, into one place. And the efficiency is just so much more profound. I don't think we really take into account the pain that something as simple as email can present into daily operations.
Yeah.
Right. Because I forget to include this person on the distribution list, or even a better example might be a new hire. Right. And how many times are we like forwarding old emails and reports and searching our emails for some of this stuff? When in reality, we look at like social media where everything's out in the open. It's extremely transparent, and it adds a layer of accountability to that, because if everyone in the world can see that someone's requested someone for information and there's no response for days on end, everyone can see that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it instills this baked in layer of accountability where we just saw efficiencies, starting to soar. So
yeah. I mean, you look at it like Gmail or Outlook becomes a database in itself where you're trying to search and query things and forward it, and just the amount of time that you spend going back and forth in emails is bogging down employees
we want to put everything into an Excel sheet, and sometimes we don't even know what the schema of that table should be, so it should be a little bit unstructured, but we don't really have like good solutions for the organization to work in those things where we're actively discovering. And so that's where you can, know SQL databases and we can relate these entities together. And so at the end of the day, it's just putting the information in everyone's fingertips.
Yeah.
So everyone's on the same page, right? We're not going through emails. Well, this is what this said. I'm going through my WhatsApp text messages. Communication's huge. And to have that communication centralized in one place, I mean, the knowledge management, it's huge for the organization.
I think you said the accountability too. I think what's so important. You see it for the operations, but from like a management perspective, all the KPIs that everybody owns, and then like rolls up to Toby's winning or not winning yet thing is so impressive.
And it allows you to simplify the business once you actually start measuring all of these levers and knobs and gears turning. And then now we can actually simplify the world to Toby's quintessential winning dashboard where you can see the entire company in one dashboard, and where are we rocking in, where we need some work or improvements. So
no, it's super impressive operation. And Toby's now the CEO of EQT and taking that same mindset over there to drive efficiencies. And so coming back to Resnet with the well tender product, Because if I remember correctly, like a couple of years when you were telling me about it, it was like matching, like, being able to match pumpers to jobs as well. Is that correct? Were y'all doing that?
It really depends on the operator, whether they run routes or they run more of a routeless model.
Yeah.
But whether it's matching the right field operator to the right asset, or quite simply the right field operator to the right job at that specific time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of efficiencies to be made there. We still see a lot of, phone calls and text messages and things not executing as quite as they should or as we'd planned.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So if I'm a production engineer, say I'm a production engineer at Coterra.
Okay.
I don't know why I call that Coterra, but just that's where I want to work. And so I get on here, what does my user interface look like? Like, what do I have access to? What am I looking at on the screen?
Well, so first it would probably depend on the specific flow, but as a production engineer, typically I'm going to be opening up my production dashboards. I'm going to be opening up my manage by exception surveillance, right? A day in the life of a production engineer for a lot of guys is I wake up in the morning, walk into a barn, I see a Mount Everest pile of hay, and I'm just every day diving into that pile looking for needles, right? And so if we could perhaps codify a magnet to suck those needles out, that was an analogy that VP of production at EQT actually gave me, and it's stuck with me ever since because it's exactly right. And so for production engineer, probably they'd want to go to their what we call our production surveillance and intelligence analytics, which has everything and anything related to production operations, from just daily production historian to the forecasts to the downtime to the accounting database to reserves, getting all that information in one place so that way the production engineer can make the best decision possible. Right? Is this well actually having a problem today, or perhaps our forecast was just way too overly optimistic and the well indeed does not have a problem, it's just a delta from our forecast. So they'll have a bunch of analytics, and then that's where ultimately I'm trying to provide engineers what I call a 4D experience, right? We want one place where we can connect all your data. No more context switching, no more 15 different tabs and windows open, everything within 2 or 3 clicks from your fingertips.
This goes against John's ethos in the office with his million tabs. We were, before the podcast, someone on our team, John, was showing us something, and if you look at his computer, he's got literally like 30 or 40 tabs open. I'm like, that fucking drives me.
He somehow knows where everything's at.
And he knows, you ask him, the system works for him, but consolidating that all into all one data, platform.
And then the second D, our dashboards, we want to visualize all of our data, and we want to be able to put all of that in one place. So not only can, drilling and completion see how are we trending for the year, but production operations also has access to that information. And in the event that drilling or completions is impacting, a well.
That's actually, that's an interesting point because, I talk about what we're building with Collide. There's 2 huge problems in the industry. First one is knowledge transfer and retention. And the second one is recruiting. But if you talk about that knowledge transfer, I always talk about it. Like, you can look at it on a micro scale within an E&P. Drilling doesn't know what production's doing. Production doesn't know what completions is doing. So there's this knowledge transfer issue within E&Ps. And then if you zoom out to the entire oil and gas industry, upstream doesn't know what downstream does. Downstream doesn't know what upstream does. And then go out to a broader view of energy. Geothermal has a need for a lot of expertise from oil and gas. Oil and gas is trying to see what's happening over in geothermal. But, I've always seen this problem, even out in the field, of just this miscommunication and transfer of knowledge between drilling, completions, and production. And it's just, in my opinion, it's just an issue of transparency.
100%. You're exactly right. As far as what I've seen in the industry. And so we get those dashboards. Everyone in the business can understand, are we winning? To Toby's point. The third D is dialogue. So like when I look at, and I'm being honest, right? When I look at a landscape of operators, I think a lot of operators, for the most part, they're always going to be cleaning their data. That's never going to stop. But pretty good data, understand where things are and where they go. Dashboards. There's some great talent out in the market right now. So we see some great analytics coming from companies. I don't see too many organizations that have too many, pain points there. But where I think the world gets very, very small very quickly is where you have organizations that have good to great data, good to great dashboards infused with dialogue at the end of the day. And dialogue and communication ultimately is how stuff gets done. And that's where ultimately dialogue is more disparate than anything in these organizations. People are talking in siloed email threads. People are talking in siloed Teams channels, DMs, WhatsApp out in the field, text messages. And at the end of the day, your VP of ops might just be like, what is going on today? Why were we 2 hours behind, on this schedule over here? And he can't see in WhatsApp text messages that his guys are on it, right? Like they're doing exactly what they need to be doing, but it's due to that lack of transparency. It's an hour or two every single day wondering like, I wonder if we're actually doing what we said we were going to do. Well, now we can check because all of that dialogue is in one place.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how much that is part of the thesis for us across the entire industry is just like conversations happen in silos and it's not indexed. It's not searchable. You have no transparency into it. And so I think I've studied Jeff Bezos a lot in their memo system that they use at Amazon because as our company scales, I found that communication is a critical component of running a business. And it's like, how can you keep that level of transparency and communication as you add people to your team and you scale your business? And it's not a trivial thing. And so it's like I've studied how Jeff Bezos did that at Amazon because I think they've done a really good job of it. And then it's like, okay, from a technical perspective, like even here, we use Slack, we use email a little bit, mostly like external facing. Right. And then we have text messages, we have Notion, we have ClickUp. And so it's like all of a sudden communication can start happening in many different places.
Yes.
And then I'm like, hey, where did Jake send me that? You send that to me on text, email, Slack, even someone the other day is like, hey, I just sent it to you. And I'm like, I open up Slack, it's not there. I'm like, what'd you send it on? Like I texted it to you. And I'm like, it's fucking annoying at minimum, right?
And it goes back to the whole, like, these are like microseconds and minutes that we're just shaving off over the course of an entire day that in bulk add up to be a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
But they're so minor, so discrete that, it's very difficult to see that concrete change unless we look at it over a long enough period. And it goes back to the analogy, right? We were walking on that treadmill at a 5% incline. We didn't even know it until we got off that treadmill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you don't know until you actually know, right? And you're able to see it. And so, actually, I'm not going to use this analogy because it's not a great analogy, but it's related to fat people and treadmills. But I was saying, like, people don't know how much like better they would feel if like they actually if you could actually put them in a zero gravity environment to like, hey, this is how you would feel if you shed 100 pounds. Like, don't your joints feel so much better when you walk? But it's like you don't know until until you're there. So sorry to veer that off, but I just had that thought come up. But yeah, so for you, you've got this badass production product that's aimed at really being the central platform and connecting all of these data sources and technologies. And then got this very technical reservoir engineering well testing product. And so tell us a little bit about that and like try to keep it fucking dumbed down for someone that's not a reservoir engineer.
Yeah. Like me. So, well spacing, parent-child wells, right? We drilled a unit 4 years ago and now we're coming in and infilling. Usually we've seen huge degradation to those child wells, right? There's depletion. Some of those wells have sucked, the oil out. Yeah. And then there's, low pressure zones, so we don't get as good of a frac. And so those child wells can be quite detrimental.
Yeah.
With respect to your type curve. You have communication between zones. So there's a lot of these things that are very, very difficult for us to analyze and for us to optimize. And so it can be quite expensive when we're testing these things out. And the story that I kind of tell around how intelligent flow control was born was, just took Rice Energy public. Toby's on CNBC telling to the street, we're going to use these dollars to support our near-term drilling campaign in the Marcellus. Being the degenerate landman that he is, takes a lot of those dollars and shoves them right into the Utica. And so we kind of had bet the company on the Utica. We drill our first well, the Bigfoot 9H. It comes online at 42 million a day, 200-foot flare, just burning a hole in the sky. Before ESG.
ESG wasn't a thing.
This is 2014, okay. And my brothers come up to me and they're like, "Hey, Ryan, so what do you think our well spacing is going to be?" And I'm just like, "What?" Like there isn't a formula or an Excel thing. I can just punch these numbers in and boom, out pops like, oh, you guys need to be drilling at 1,200 or 1,000 foot well spacing. No, like we need to use data and we need to test this out. And so I had to explain to him at that time, like unlike the Marcellus where, you know, I'm mining all of our offset peers information and I'm analyzing that so that we don't have to spend those dollars in science. We can take those lessons learned and apply them to our own asset development program. We didn't have that luxury in the Utica. We were first movers alongside Gulfport. There was a whopping 3 wells in the dry gas window.
It's your dollars doing the R&D now.
Yeah. And so we have to test this ourselves, guys. And I won't get into it, but for Ohio's a little bit unique from a land unitization perspective, where, you know, we could hold by production in the majority of our lease if we were to unitize the land equivalent to our well spacing. Okay, so well spacing was extremely important. It is regardless of this problem, but with this opportunity, it made it even that much more important.
Yeah.
So we did this 9-well variable spacing unit. We sink $120 million into the ground. Those wells come online. They're online for 3 days. And I think this was at the Fuse last year. And they come back down from their ivory tower and they're like, so well spacing, you know, what's it at? And I was just like, guys, these wells are at 7,500 pounds surface pressure. And because of downstream capacity constraints, we're going to be a flat rate for like 3 years. I'm not going to see any rate decline, no data that's going to allow me to calculate EURs and tell you what our well spacing should be. But if you give me 9 months, like I can probably figure something out. Like I have to.
Yeah.
And my brother Derek, he just laughed at me. He's like, 9 months? Like, no. Like every day that goes by, we run the risk of drilling a suboptimal well, and we are in no position, you know, to be able to stomach that. You need to do your job and figure this out. And I was like, well, how much time do I have? And he's like, I can give you 6 weeks. You have 6 weeks to do whatever you do to figure it out. So the first question I asked was like, you know, I'm seeing some of this, you know, interference testing on one petro around these Chow pressure group study tests. I'm like, can I do a shut-in? They laugh at me like, no, you can't do a shut-in, you idiot. You know, every unit of gas coming out of these wells is paying for the rigs down the street. So I had a full-blown panic attack that night. I don't know what I'm going to do. A lot of pressure riding on, you know, for my brothers.
You know what you needed was Collide Pro.
All I needed was Collide Pro at that time.
Answer would have been in there for you.
Yeah. So, you know, fast forward, I determined that, you know, hell, I don't have any tools in my toolbox right now. I'm just going to start throwing spaghetti on the wall.
Yeah.
And so I started playing with the intelligent auto chokes on location, playing musical instruments with them. I'm stepping one well, opening it up, allowing it to produce a little more. Meanwhile, I'm curtailing another well. That way I can keep all my production flat.
Your production's flat,
but
yeah.
now I'm messing with the pressure. And now let me see what pressure is doing as a function of well spacing. And so then I lived at the office during these 6 weeks. The joke was like, I wasn't showering. I was showering in the bathroom. It was bad.
Yeah.
But over the course of 6 weeks, you know, I had that aha moment where I was looking at thousands of data points from this musical instrument test that, for me, it was very clear that 1,000-foot well spacing, you know, at that current strip deck was going to be the right bet for us. And so, you know, we made that decision, and it was from that journey I learned I could use this methodology, this technology, to apply across our entire asset development program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are we waiting 9 months to figure out what were the results of this completion design test?
Yeah.
If it can save us $1 million a well, or if it's going to bump up our EURs by 10%, that's a huge prize. And so instead of waiting 9 months, we want to accelerate that down to a 4 to 6 week period. That way I can apply those decisions on the next well, And so our learning curve quickly accelerated as a function of this very bespoke, you know, technical reservoir work that we were doing on each and every single one of our wells.
You know, I mean, the industry has burned so much capital on trying to figure out well spacing that it's imperative that you get good data and information so that you can apply it to the next wells. You know, I got the name Frac Slap from this whole frac hit issue. I don't know if you know that or not, but
I didn't.
This reporter for JPT, he was at some SPE event, and he tweeted that there was a reservoir engineer up there, and he said there's really a spectrum to frac hits. He said you had frac slaps, frac punches, and frac kicks. I was like, dude, frac slaps, I fucking love that. And that became my name. So whoever that reservoir engineer is out there, I don't remember who it was, but there's someone out there that
some branding rights too.
I'm already trademarked and copyrighted, so it's already mine.
And if you search Frac Slap and Collide Pro, you're just gonna find you repeatedly, so we'll never find the true source.
Yeah. So no, Super interesting, man. I'm actually glad that you gave us some insight to that, because I had no idea that was kind of the genesis of how you figured out that service and that
Just learn by
technology.
doing
And
it.
so that's how you learn anything, right? It's just by
Yep.
doing it. And so for you, what's the future look like for Resnet? Obviously the last couple of years, you've really been building out the product. You're starting to take it to market now. What's the sentiment and the response to well tender and the production side of the platform? I mean, are you finding that these companies are more easily adopting stuff like this? Like, are they picking up the idea of what
That's
you're
a
putting
great
out there?
question. That's a great question. I think in terms of reception, people are definitely open-minded,
Mhm.
right? But when it comes down to the brass tacks, change management,
I was
it-
gonna say, for like something like this, like, you're so deeply rooted into their processes, right? That it's
Yep.
just very high barrier, high friction, because I mean, there's significant cost to instilling something where you're like, hey, I want to be your central platform, which I think it's a sucks when you're building that, but it's also like the high barrier shit is like also where the opportunity
it's a
is.
challenge.
It's where the opportunity is too, because high barrier means that it's hard to compete
Better
with,
moat.
and so
Yeah.
better moat. And so, that's something I didn't think about until I asked that question. But it's definitely a tough dynamic. But
It's a double-edged sword.
But you think the companies are, they're open-minded to new ways of doing things?
Yeah. I mean, they definitely are. I think consolidation is definitely kind of top of mind for everyone. So I think, like, if you were to ask me today, I think people are a little bit more cautious to adopt technology. I think this comes down whether it's, in job insecurity or where am I going to be in 2 years. So, it feels like maybe there's like a press pause right now on adopting new technologies to some degree, especially anything, that might be a high barrier.
Yeah.
And so this is where it comes back to the services, right? I'll try to start small, right? Shrink the territory, find a specific use case where even on a consulting basis, we can help you guys.
Yeah.
Build that relationship, because this is just something that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
And
valuable. And so you start building a relationship there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
the tiny industry, right? You're going to run into each other, for the next 20, 30 years. And so much more focused on the relationship, kind of keeping that 10, 20-year vision in mind.
Yeah.
Seeing where we can be helpful. And then it's really just an evolution from that point forward. Right? We don't try to boil the ocean day one with getting all the users onto it. I treat it much like, I'd learned, from Toby and my brothers with respect to change management. Let's focus on one team, one department. Let's focus on these specific use cases and problems. And once we have success, then slowly expanding out to other departments.
Yeah. Are you presenting at Energy Tech Night next year?
I can.
You should.
Pick a city. We got a lot of them.
We'll let you have. We usually pick by committee, but
you guys tell me where, and I'll be there.
You want to do Midland?
I can do Midland.
We got Midland, Houston, Oklahoma City, Denver.
Is there anybody left in Midland? Or do they all get acquired at this point?
We were talking about this on BDE yesterday. Like, Kirk's like, he's like, what's the urge? What's the rush for all these acquisitions? It's like, dude, this industry is a follow-on industry. It's like one acquisition happens and everyone's like, oh shit, we got to make an acquisition too.
A little bit, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think we're gonna do Calgary too. It's not official, but
oh, nice.
Calgary would be.
And Fort Worth is getting added. If you didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, I can do Fort Worth.
Taking this shit fucking all
going
over the
everywhere.
place.
And then just moved to Dallas, so that wouldn't be too far.
That's a short drive for you. Then.
Yeah, an hour, 45 minutes.
Oh, you moved
Are you in Dallas? Dallas?
No, like north, basically in Oklahoma.
Okay.
In Frisco.
Okay.
South Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
I was in Frisco like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, picking up a smoker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, for the ranch. We got a ranch up there.
Oh.
You should come out, shoot some guns.
Oh, I would love that, man.
Let's do it.
Show you my gator hunt.
Yeah.
I gotta do that sometime.
I was in Austin last week, and it's like a group of 30 people, really successful tech entrepreneurs, big YouTubers. But one of them, he's this tech entrepreneur, and he sold a couple of his companies and he moved south of Atlanta. And his new thing, it's kind of a passion project. It's his coding boot camp, and he bought 50 acres, 50-acre ranch south of Atlanta, and it's a 2-week boot camp for all the people that take his course. And you come out there and like you wake up in the morning, you do push-ups, code for a couple hours, you go out, you shoot guns, and his whole thing that he's doing is he wants to make the most based programmers in the world and like kind of like fight Silicon Valley tech. I was like, dude, this is fucking amazing.
That's unique. I've never heard of that before.
Dude, he's a very unique person. Like after he sold his company, he moved to South Korea to become a movie star. And he's like in these commercials. And
That's
like,
interesting.
yeah, and then
Pivot.
and then moved back to the US, and now he's doing this. And so that's what we should do. That post this, go out in the range, shoot guns, develop stuff. So, but no, man, super interesting stuff that you've been working on. We're gonna get you at Energy Tech Night. You won Fuse last year. Took home the.
You're gonna do that next year?
Ship. Fuse.
The startup competition.
Oh, I don't think we're gonna do Fuse at all.
Oh no.
No.
Damn.
Yeah, you just made this awkward. You just had to break that news.
This is breaking news right now.
Breaking news. Yeah, guys, I don't think we're going to do Fuse next year. I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but no, we're like Energy Tech Night.
That's where it's at.
That's where it's at, man. Just true product market fit there. So much value created there. So we're going to go in on, for anything energy tech, we're going to put that through.
Lessons
Energy Tech
learned,
Night.
Evolving.
Lessons learned, evolving, man.
Yeah.
Focusing on Collide too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, with Clyde coming out, that's where a lot of our time and attention's going towards. So, yeah, you don't have a chance to win Fuse again. So sorry about that.
You're the only winner ever. So that's pretty. You're pretty much having an NFT as your trophy.
A physical NFT, the trophy. Yeah, 100%.
The 101.
Yeah, but anyways, you just had a kid,
Yeah. Yep.
little baby girl.
Will be 6 months.
Already?
Yeah, in a week or two.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yep. So
Time flies.
that's been amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Adds on to the plate of building a startup too. Is,
I mean, how can
trying to be a
you think
dad.
more
And,
in
yeah,
hard mode?
yeah.
So
We don't do things on easy mode around here, man. Just pure hard mode. So, for anyone that's listening to this, who are you trying to, what's your ask? You trying to talk to production engineers, talk to reservoir engineers. I mean, what's your ask?
my ask would probably just be like, trying to build relationships with people, specifically with production, operations engineers, reservoir engineers. Try to understand, where do you guys have problems and where do you see the market heading in 2 years? And just being open to, working with parties that have experience in this and that are trying to be a lending hand.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
no different than kind of what we're doing now. Just keep an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can vouch for you. I think you're a pretty dope dude. So anyone that's listening, you should reach out to Ryan. If nothing else, just because he's a cool guy. So definitely one to hang out with and build a relationship with. Is Resnet, do you have a website up right now? Is it public facing?
Resnet.ai.
Cool. Resnet.ai.
Gamification stuff on there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick before we get off, because I forgot
Yeah.
about that point. The gamification that y'all built on the platform, like you actually have dedicated people
Yes.
on the team that are
Yes.
thinking about the gamification. Sorry to kind of loop this in at the end, but I forgot about this. Let's talk about that real quick. Like, what are y'all doing?
That's a great question. So the insight actually came again from Rice Energy, just like all of our insights and everything that we're passionate about. The insight came, Salesforce had recently rolled out this new badge feature. Okay. And I couldn't help but notice, culture is something that's extremely important, not only to the brothers, but, to myself as well. And I just noticed that there was maybe a little bit less time of Toby walking around the office, making a calamity, distracting people, but high-fiving them, shaking their hand, like, great job on that, well, man. There was a little bit less of that. And now I saw just a lot more badges being awarded on Salesforce. And my initial reaction to that was, that's not a good change, right? Let's not take the people aspect out of it, Toby. And I wanted to talk to Toby. I was like, hey, man, I don't know how you feel about this, and we got into it, and he was very, very firm. Like, no, I think I'm not going to stop doing this right now. I've just been a little bit more focused on this, but that recognition, on the Facebook feed for everyone to see, and to see everything that one person's got. I think it's going to work. And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit bearish on it, but we had just made this acquisition of Vantage. And again, Toby's on CNBC making these promises. And we were going to be able to absorb all of Vantage's assets with theoretically no new hires, right? Just totally synergistic. And I'm looking at the data and I'm looking at the daily ops and I'm just doing some back of the envelope math, like, hey, we have on average 8 work orders per site per day, and we only have 55 guys out in the field. We just acquired another 100 sites out of thin air. I don't think this is physically possible for us to get these guys. And so I'm doing everything nerdy, technical, coding out better forms, better flows, better loading. Nothing's moving the needle, as you would probably imagine, right? Because my code's not going to get that wrench turn, moved any faster.
Yeah.
But what I started to notice was over the course of about 12 weeks, I saw about a 40% increase in the work order efficiency of like our top 20 field operators. And so I call up my main guys, Kenny G. I'm like, Kenny G, what is going on, dude? I'm looking at these numbers. You're absolutely killing it, dude. You got to let me know what your secret. Are you juicing? Like, because we got to juice the rest of the field to get these type of results. And he just starts laughing at me. And I'm just like, why are you laughing at me? And he's just like, I think it's those stupid badges that you and your brothers keep making every night, And I was like, what? Because like right now I was like, God.
It's like, damn it, Toby.
Damn it, Toby. He always knows. And so I was just like, what? He's like, no, seriously, man. You see, I used to wake up in the morning and I'd look at this long laundry list of shit I got to do in Salesforce and I get it done, right? But now I go to Chad's profile page and I just look at the last badge that like you gave him. And it becomes my life mission to get that badge because I'm always going to be better than Chad, right? Like I am better than, and I was just like, holy shit. Like this badge, this recognition that this guy is getting is actually delivering at the end of the day, bottom line increase in efficiency. And so is that insight like to our culture, not necessarily gamification, but culture. How do we get people loving their jobs every day? Because they're going to do better. Yeah. And so we knew that, at Rice with focusing on our culture, but this to me was like the first insight with respect to like digital culture and how can we influence that. And so I met our head of product experience. Her name's Erin Fair. She's an adjunct professor right now. She's dedicated her career to gamification, but behavioral social psychology. How can we influence processes in the right way to yield better results? And so she opened my mind to there's an actual science to gamification. And I say that now like, wow, I sound like an idiot because there's video games out there that they study this and Facebook and things like that. But she turned me on to, the classic Octalysis framework that goes through the 8 core drivers, right? And, in everyday talk, we might talk about different personalities, right? Different cultures. And in gamification, layman speak, that comes down to different player archetypes. Yeah. Right. And so whether it's your personality or your player archetype, and how can we figure out, what drives you? Yeah. Are you more influenced by social influence, what your peers are doing? Or are you more, motivated by, being an executioner, being someone that's actually just delivering results day over day? Or are you more of an explorer, right? You're constantly in this data discovery mode and thinking of things and finding new things. And so it's focusing on actually respecting that core architectural framework and implementing that digitally into the platform in ways that I think we think we could replicate, but at the end of the day, very difficult to replicate. So turning day into like Call of Duty. So here's the challenge, the daily and the weekly challenge. So if you have bespoke data initiatives where, I need to know if there's a casing hanger on this wall because it might influence, the type of workover and type of equipment that we need for this upcoming workover. Well, I don't know if there's a casing hanger on this wall. Well, that's a problem in of itself, right? Why don't we just take a picture of the wellhead? But I don't want to ask my pumper just another thing for him to do. I know he's super busy, but if we can make a daily challenge,
put a bounty out for it,
take a selfie behind, of a piece of wellhead equipment and tag the equipment. Something very easy for these guys to do, but we're able to spread out these data collection initiatives over the course of a few months in a very consistent manner. And so, daily, weekly challenges to game modes, right? Yeah. I've worked out in the field. I know these guys, we play games. Yeah. We compete with one another. Like, hey, I bet you I can replace 20 of these pneumatic devices before you do.
Especially in oil and gas. It's such a pissing contest.
It is.
It's even like I do this over on TikTok. When I first found it out was that drill bit video because I said, this isn't gamification, but it's more so of a pissing contest. Like I said, the jets on the drill bit were up in the cones of the drill bit. What I just meant was like they're up here, and people are like, jets aren't in the cones of the drill bit, and like had to come like flex their knowledge, and it drives the algorithm, them commenting. And I was like, oh shit, like I can say something just like a little bit off.
A little bit off, and people are
People are going to comment and make it go viral. And so like you start figuring out like these little engagement hacks. But yeah, I mean, you see this all the time, like with sales teams, like, you know, there's competitiveness, and humans are competitive by nature most of the time. And so start building out these gamification elements. And Aaron's great. First time I met Aaron, me and Ryan and Aaron all went and played at trivia at some dive bar.
Oh yeah,
in Houston. And actually, did we crush it? I think we won. I felt like we crushed it. Yeah,
we definitely won.
And so she's great. But yeah, that's what I was, you know, back at the beginning of this episode, I was talking about like y'all's attention to detail and creativeness and branding and design. Like that all plays a big part of it.
One of our core values as a company, creativity.
Some of the characters like they had made for like their company. You want me to tell the story?
A little too much fun with that
too much. I want to tell it, but he had like some like Animorph looking, or no, it was Avatar, like Avatar looking characters.
Yeah.
They said that
we were trying to get a superhero for everyone in the company. And
yeah, they said Ryan's looked a little sus.
The
but
design artist maybe had a little too much fun with mine. We're going, you know, similar jokes to the roast.
Yeah.
Ryan
just getting roasted from
my sexuality, my gender,
from all
you look at the superhero and be like, man, I don't know about you anymore. So we don't. That never saw the light of day.
It's always these caricature artists and designers that'll roast you first. So no, that was funny though. But man, appreciate you coming on the show. I actually learned a lot about you today. You know, considering someone that I've known for a couple of years and considered to be a good friend, I've learned some details that I haven't learned. So, anyways, we'll put a link to Resnet in the show notes. If you need to find Ryan, where can they find you? You're on Twitter, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Are you on LinkedIn? I've never seen you on LinkedIn.
I'm not the best at the social media, man.
Yeah, which is kind of weird.
I could probably take a few notes from you guys, honestly.
But we'll drop a link to your Twitter, and they can reach over to you on Twitter. So, dude, appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, guys. This was a lot of fun.
It's been a blast, man.
Yep. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Share it on LinkedIn. Share it on Twitter. Send it on email. I don't give a damn how you share it. Just share it with someone. We'll catch you next episode.